Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating and undeniably dark theory that's been circulating out there about the central banking system. Now, right off the bat, we aren't here to take sides or validate any of these claims. We're simply going to map out this complex narrative totally objectively using the evidence drawn directly from our source material. Let's get right into it.
So, the entire theory we're looking at hinges on a single, fairly chilling question. What is the fate of those who resist dollar hegemony? The argument really pushes us to examine the centralized power of the US dollar and then look closely at what supposedly happens to the individuals who stand in its way.
All right, diving into the core of this, what the source calls the central bank conspiracy. The theory outlines a very distinct, repeating pattern. Essentially, it claims that challengers of money printing power constantly face disappearance or even death. Whenever someone with enough influence tries to alter the financial status quo, the argument goes they are mysteriously and often violently removed from the equation. To see how this plays out, let's look at some U.S. presidents who supposedly defied the almighty dollar. This theory starts right at the absolute top of the political ladder. On one side, we've got Abraham Lincoln, who issued government greenbacks, bringing currency power directly into federal hands. And then fast forward to John F. Kennedy, who signed an executive order directly targeting the Federal Reserve System. The narrative here is that these infamous assassinations weren't just random acts by lone gunmen, but were actually orchestrated systemic reactions to their financial defiance.
But the theory doesn't stop in Washington. It takes a wild turn to the Titanic.
Okay, this is where things get really unexpected. The crucial focus for the source here is the number 3. Reportedly, there were exactly 3 incredibly powerful, wealthy tycoons on board the doomed Titanic who were vehemently opposed to the establishment of the Federal Reserve. Just think about the massive concentration of anti-central bank wealth that plunged into the icy abyss on that single night.
Which brings us right to the number 1. Because exactly 1 year after those major opponents sank, the Federal Reserve, the very core of today's dollar power, was officially established. The timeline is used here to suggest a chillingly convenient setup. The sinking removed the only financial roadblocks massive enough to actually stop the Fed's creation.
Moving on from tycoons and presidents, let's talk about politicians who got a bit too close to the truth. When you look at how the source strings these seemingly unrelated events together, it builds a pretty intense, multi-generational timeline of tragedy. You've got 1912, the Titanic sinks with Fed opponents. 1963, JFK is assassinated after his currency orders. And then 1983, Representative Larry McDonald is killed in the KAL-007 shootdown. The goal here is to establish a relentless, century-long pattern of elimination. Digging deeper into the congressional files, the source emphasizes that Representative McDonald was killed in a missile strike right after exposing the Trilateral Commission. Then you have Representative Louis McFadden. He chaired the Banking Committee, was a massive critic of the Fed, survived 2 literal assassination attempts, and then died of a highly suspicious heart attack. Imagine looking at this history as a lawmaker today. The implication they're drawing is crystal clear. Vocal opposition comes with fatal consequences. All right, bringing this all the way up to the modern era, we have the Bitcoin enigma. This is where the conspiracy jumps out of the dusty history books and directly into the digital age. Bitcoin's anonymous founder, Satoshi Nakamoto, is defined here not just as a tech innovator, but as the architect of the absolute greatest modern threat to centralized banking. Basically, they represent the biggest crack in dollar hegemony to date. And, well, fitting perfectly into this dark historical pattern, the creator of decentralized currency completely disappeared without a trace. Just poof, gone. Just like the presidents, the tycoons, and the politicians before him, Nakamoto vanished. This modern mystery serves as the ultimate final puzzle piece in this overarching narrative. So, after laying out all these case files, the source leaves us with one massive question. They drop this pretty chilling assertion to wrap things up. Perhaps a grand designer we don't know about is already running the world. The whole theory boils down to the suggestion that these historical deaths and disappearances are absolutely not random accidents, but fully orchestrated eliminations by an unseen force protecting the global financial system. So I'm passing the ultimate question from our source material straight to you. Are these historical parallels just a crazy century-long string of tragic coincidences, or is there actually a larger, hidden design at play protecting the dollar? It's a massive, complex theory for sure, but seeing all the connective tissue laid out really does change how you look at the timeline. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the history around you.